I am Iron Man.
Iron Man. When we think of the MCU, it's hard not to think of him. He's the guy who started it all, and his movie not only built up the MCU from the ground up, but it started a legacy for superhero movies that would live on even today, setting the groundwork for what superhero movies should be and would be for years to come.
Yeah, Iron Man!
For many people, Iron Man is their favorite superhero in the entirety of Marvel, largely due to the portrayal in the live-action movies. For the rest of us, though he's not our favorite, he's still one of the most beloved characters in the MCU for us. Though, one can't deny that after the ending of Avengers Endgame, he's gained a special place in all of our hearts. At the end of Avengers Endgame, which, if you haven't seen it yet, what are you doing? At this point, it's on you if I spoil it. But yes, spoilers will be ahead. At the end of Avengers Endgame, Iron Man makes a sacrifice, which does inevitably cost him his life, but in doing so, he saves the entirety of the universe from Thanos, who plans to wipe it all out to rebuild it so that he can live in a grateful world that does not know suffering or pain. Iron Man's death shocked the crowds. People were crying in the theaters, and many were very sad to see such a beloved character go. But I believe that his death, and more specifically his sacrifice, was foreshadowed from the beginning of the Avengers films. And not only the beginning of the Avengers films, but the start of the Iron Man movies. But to understand all that, we're going to have to go all the way back to the dewy slopes of Iron Man 1. This is the movie that cemented the legacy for Iron Man and the future that he would have in the MCU. We first run into Iron Man as a cocky arms dealer who thinks really, really highly of himself, piggybacking off of the success that his father Howard Stark had as a weapons manufacturer during World War II, who aided and abetted Captain America.
Genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist.
It's definitely not wrong to say that in the early days of the MCU, Iron Man was really, really unlikable. Despite the fact that he was a genius and was really good with machines, he was, for all intents and purposes, kind of a douchebag. And when you see scenes of him flaunting his money or going on expensive trips and being arrogant and cocky towards his fellow team members in the Avengers, it's kind of hard to believe that this man would be the one who sacrifices himself to save the entirety of the world. But again, I would argue that that sacrifice was foreshadowed from the beginning, because in Iron Man 1, when Tony Stark jumpstarts his career as Iron Man, one of the first things he does is make a sacrifice play. And the thing in question that he sacrifices is his company. When Tony Stark gets trapped in the desert, he has a scare where terrorists encounter his weapons and then use them against him. He comes to find out that this is actually quite a common occurrence in the Middle East, and takes it upon himself to shut down the weapons manufacturing in his company so that he can prevent more deaths of innocent people due to his weapons. What he sees in the Middle East is a war dystopia, full of crime and people who are impoverished and imprisoned. And he wants to prevent this, so he sacrifices his company, or at least the weapons manufacturing part of his company, so that he can take one step towards bettering the world, and, in turn, possibly bettering himself. It becomes even more notable that he's willing to make this sacrifice towards the end of the movie, because he's willing to sacrifice his life to save Pepper Potts, who he does end up falling in love with, and there is a whole relationship storyline for them. But the sacrifices continue on in Iron Man 2. In this movie, we see Iron Man 6 months into his career as Iron Man, and the plot of the movie essentially illustrates underlying concerns that the United States government has that Tony Stark essentially possesses a high-tech super weapon that he could use against anyone he pleases at any time. During this movie, we also come to learn the continued use of the Iron Man suit is slowly killing Tony Stark because of the palladium that he has to use to power the suit, to power the core of the suit. Essentially, we learn that the very device that is keeping him alive is also slowly killing him. And so, throughout this movie, he's searching for a new element to replace the palladium so that he can continue to not only use the Iron Man suit, but live in general. I think that this, in and of itself, demonstrates some level of sacrifice, because what he's using the Iron Man suit for is good. He's going into the Middle East, he's handling these expeditions that the United States military could not handle because they could not get men on the ground. He's going in, he's fixing the problems, he's taking out the, quote, bad guys. And we come to learn that he's doing all of this at the expense of his own life because his suit is slowly killing him. Another one of the big plot points in this movie is the Stark Expo, which was started by his father, Howard Stark, who helped Captain America back in the 70s. And the Stark Expo is basically just a really cool little town for inventors to show off their inventions. It's supposed to be the center of innovation in their world. And it runs on the idea that technology is building the future, and that to build the future, to have a better future, we will need that technology. And so this is just a place for people to show off some of the newest and most innovative technology. I don't want to get too into the plot of this movie, but I will say this. The Stark Expo is infiltrated by someone who has somewhat good intentions, a rival and competitive of Tony Stark, but uses a very, very bad guy to get there. And said bad guy has a vendetta. He wants to kill Tony Stark. However, the guy who facilitates his work only wants to ruin Tony Stark's legacy by one-upping him and creating bigger, better Iron Man-like suits. And these suits are presented at, you guessed it, the Stark Expo in an attempt to ruin Tony Stark's legacy. But what wasn't anticipated is that this bad guy, Ivan Vanko, would take control of these suits and use them to kill Tony Stark when he arrived. What this ends up leading to is, that's right, Tony Stark making another sacrifice play. And what he does is he sacrifices the Stark Expo by allowing bombs to blow it up in an attempt to save all those around. They evacuate the park and the Stark Expo is blown up, which in a way is quite a sacrifice for him, because the Stark Expo is connection to why his father originally started Stark Industries, why this company was so important for innovation, for inventing. And in a way, not only is he sacrificing a part of his own legacy, but he's sacrificing a part of his father's legacy. As we know, Tony Stark didn't have the best relationship with his father because in his eyes, his father was cool, calculating, and cold. And in a way, he lived this entire secret life that Tony never even knew about until the plot of Iron Man 2, where he was one of the founding members of S.H.I.E.L.D. and stuff like that. So in a way, Tony is also sacrificing part of the memory that he held fondly of his father. When many people refer to Tony Stark's sacrifice and why it was in some ways such a shock, they refer back to this scene from the first Avengers movie where Captain America and Iron Man kind of get into it a little bit.
Man, what are we, a team? No. We're a chemical mixture that makes chaos. We're a time bomb.
You need to step away.
Why shouldn't the guy let off a little steam?
You know damn well why. Back off.
Oh, I'm starting to want you to make me.
Yeah. Big man in a suit of armor. Take that off. What are you?
Genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist.
I know guys with none of that worth 10 of you. I've seen the footage. The only thing you really fight for is yourself. You're not the guy to make the sacrifice play, to lay down on a wire and let the other guy crawl over you.
I think I would just cut the wire.
Always a way out. You know, you may not be a threat, but you better stop pretending to be a hero.
A hero? Like you? You're a laboratory experiment, Rogers. Everything special about you came out of a bottle.
Frequently, I see people using this scene to say, oh, Captain America was wrong, he made the sacrifice play, he saved everybody at the end of Avengers Endgame. But again, I want to point out that this is not the first time that Iron Man made the sacrifice play. In fact, the first sacrifice play that Iron Man ever makes comes at the end of Avengers 1. And I feel like this scene doesn't get enough credit for what it's worth and what it meant for Iron Man's legacy, where at the end of Avengers 1, he carries a nuclear weapon through a wormhole into outer space and almost loses his life doing it. In fact, he's left with crippling PTSD, so it was even a sacrifice to his mental health, and it hurts his relationship with Pepper Potts. We see evidence of this not only in Iron Man 3, but even towards the end of Infinity War when he's having another argument with Captain America. And their two perspectives tend to butt heads a lot. I will have another video about that coming out here in the near future, so subscribe and stay tuned for that. But I think his sacrifice at the end of Avengers 1 was more to make a nod to the scene that was taking place earlier in the movie where he and Captain America were getting into really what was their first big argument. And of course, those two perspectives would come head-to-head in Captain America's Civil War. But I definitely think that Avengers 1 was where they planted that scene to make it deliberate, and it was the foreshadowing for the fact that Iron Man would make the sacrifice play later on in Avengers Endgame. I also think that having Captain America and Iron Man both get into that argument was deliberate as well, because it would set up the tension that would later come to a boiling point in Captain America Civil War. But as I said earlier in the video, to say that it was a shock for Iron Man to make this sacrifice play when his entire career he has been sacrificing not only his own personal life, but his personal possessions for the good of other people is blatantly wrong. And I think that Iron Man's entire philosophy of sacrificing a little bit of our freedoms so that we can be safer is really a quintessential part of his character. So, like I said before, Iron Man was always going to be the guy who made the sacrifice play. What do you guys think? Do you agree with my analysis of Iron Man being the sacrifice play? Do you think it would have been better suited for someone else? Let me know down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and turn on the post notifications so you never miss another video like that. Check out my gaming organization, the Mute Clan, which will be linked down below. Also make sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Those will also be linked down below. Join my community Discord and head over to teespring.com/stores/scoopier and buy some of our new holiday merch before it goes out of stock. As always, I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.